All right, welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today, I'm honored to have on Michael Skeeter Pilarski. As far as I know, we've emailed back and forth for years on end now through HerbRally and Mountain Rose Herbs projects and whatnot. So with that, welcome to the show, Michael.
Yes, nice to be here, Mason, and see you in person, more
That's
or less.
right. Yeah. Well, and we'll get to it later, but I know I'll be visiting you next month over by Twisp, Washington. So I'm excited to check out some of your land over there. But before we get to that, I am curious. I would love to hear your story about your career as you started farming in the second grade.
Oh, well, way back when. Well, my parents wanted me to learn how to work. So my mother sent me off to the strawberry fields at in grade 2, and I would meet the other kids at the cozy corner, and we would all go into a semi truck, and we'd driven 40 miles in a semi truck in the back with just plank seats, no seat belts. This is pre OSHA or whatever, and we had our lunch boxes, and then we got there and we worked for 8 hours. Hot sun, mosquitoes, cold in the morning, it didn't matter. We had to work. There were Mexicans in the fields with us. We were farm workers, and I made really good money for a second grader, and that started me on you might say, on my career. And as a result, I did that for years. My mom would take all us kids out there. Eventually, she would pile us all in the car at 4 a.m. And as a result, I became a very fast picker because I was motivated. And I'm still one of the fastest pickers of anything that we get into. So I started my picking career at that very young age. And it's never, and I told my mother this, bless her soul, she's passed on, but recently, I told her that she had started me out on my career strawberry picking on my hands and knees. And I worked my way up to the top of the ladder in my profession. And I became, usually, I would say this, that of my family that did this, because my mother had 8 kids, 5 of us boys all became professional fruit pickers, 5 of us. Wow. And we were almost always, or maybe always, not pretty much always, the fastest pickers in whatever orchard we were in. So we were at the top of our profession at the time. Yeah, I did 18 years of fruit picking. Wow.
I have to ask, do you have a favorite berry or fruit to this day that has always kind of stuck with you?
Oh, I really like those strawberries, but I really like sweet cherries. I did a lot of sweet cherry picking, so I got to eat the very best sweet cherries each tree had.
I'm a big fan of I don't remember which one it is, but huckleberries, like the wild huckleberries that grow around here,
yeah.
Vaccinium, yeah.
Yeah, the native peoples were in their ranges almost always, put them at the top of their list.
Sure. I was going to ask you, were your parents herbalists or into farming as well?
No, they were. My dad was a working class guy, and you're working for the Great Lakes Freighters. My mother was a stay-at-home wife most of her life, but she ended up having to work. So my mother had a little garden. I think the thing that really got me going was that we lived on the edge of a small town with lots of woods and fields and wild areas around us. And I grew up playing in these wild areas. And so I've always had a love for nature and for being out in the wild ever since. So you might say I grew up out there. And so I still am doing it.
So who gave you the nickname Skeeter?
Oh, that was a guy in high school who didn't like me, and so he gave me sort of a derogatory name. But nobody else liked me either, so it stuck with me, and I've never been able to lose it. But a lot of people like me now, so that's okay.
Yeah, I wonder if that was like a chip on your shoulder, like all these people don't like me. I'm going to make it my mission for people to like me. Like you're organizing all sorts of events now, and I know you've done it for decades. So, but like you said, like people tend to like you now.
Well, I like to do service. I'm all about how much can I do for the world, not how much the world can do for me. So I'm out serving the public and putting on these great events for people and doing a lot of education and a lot of writing. And so people appreciate that I'm working for the common good. And so people, there's a thing about in the world that the people with the highest prestige are a lot of times are rich and famous, but the people who actually have the most respect in the sense of love are those people who serve the world the most. The Gandhis and the people, they may not have gotten rich, but they have people's respect and love. And so I'm just trying to be one of those.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm excited to talk more about some of the events that you put on, specifically the Wildcrafting Rendezvous, as well as the Northwest Herb Fair. But we'll get to that in a few. I'm curious, do you recall any, going back to your childhood, do you recall any like special plant memories you had maybe with like a specific species?
I remember a lot of time in birch trees making tree houses, or climbing up the birch tree and just clinging to it and just swaying in the wind and observing life go by below me. It was sort of like you're in a secret place. People couldn't see you. You're up there. And so that's certainly one of that's the first thing that springs to mind.
Beautiful. And you actually named your, I guess, business Friends of the Trees, Botanicals, which is, it looks to me like an herb farm, and you sell directly to the consumer, like various tinctures as well as dried herbs. Can you tell us more about Friends of the Trees Botanicals?
So it had the business for going on 30 years now. And mostly what we do is farm and wildcraft medicinals. We have 130 some botanicals on our current catalog. And it mainly goes to small and medium-sized companies, tincture makers, manufacturers. But we also sell to, these days, we sell a lot to ma and pa herbal companies, small local herb companies as well. So, and local herbalists and, folk herbalists. So we have we don't sell too much direct to consumers so much as we sell to people that then get it to the consumer. So, but we're pretty direct. Usually we're only not too many steps away from the consumer. But our stuff goes out to tens of thousands of people every year are using the medicines that are produced from our herbs. It's not even hundreds of thousands of there's a lot of doses made out of what we produce. We generally produce in the 5 pound to 50 pound range for most of our orders.
Right on. When I was doing a little bit of research on you and your business, did I see the word cidery as well?
Our main farm on the west side is at Finn River Farm and Cidery. So it's a cider, you might call it it's a agritourism destination in a sense. They make cider, and then they have a great tasting room, and thousands of people come through their doors every year, hundreds of people a weekend at times. And our garden is just downhill from the tasting room. And so a lot of these people troop by our herb patch and stand there and gawk at it and stand in awe, because we have a beautiful herb garden. And so few herb gardens get as much visitors as ours does. We don't let them walk around in it because they might step on something, but they can stand in front of it and take pictures and read a little, we have a little poster board thing out there. So it's nice to, I would say this, every garden likes to be appreciated. Every plant likes to be appreciated, just as humans like to be appreciated and love. Plants and the gardens also have feelings. They have intelligence. They are sentient beings. I'm get pretty esoteric. And
That's fine.
And so all these people that come and look at my garden and send appreciation to it, our garden, it gets a lot of appreciation. And maybe that's one of the reasons it grows so well. We have very good production there. And I could blame it on our excellent management, our great care and keeping, we don't let the weeds boss us around. We're in charge. We let weeds grow that we want to let grow. We pick the weeds which can stay and those which can't. We make a lot of money on dandelion, wild lettuce, and some other weeds that we have growing there. So, but at any rate, but I would say that part of the reason the garden grows is the love that we get it and the appreciation it gets from the general public. Also, I'm a great believer in mineral fertilizers, something really physical too. So, and we bring in wood chips or wood chips and bark by the 50-yard truckload. And
Mm.
so we put a lot of organic matter into our site, and those chips and the bark are broken down by a very rich soil microbiota, a lot of worms, a lot of fungi. And as a result, that's our main fertilization source. We don't bring manures in and things, a lot of outside bags. We do bring in minerals, but the main input into our system is these chips and woody debris. So I recommend everybody to fertilize their place with chips, bark, woody debris of various kinds.
Yeah, you're just painting a picture, and I could just imagine going to your farm and just experiencing the liveliness. I'm sure you're seeing all sorts of pollinators and just that buzz and like the sun and the beautiful plants in bloom. And yeah, it really does come alive. And I love that you're saying like the appreciation and adoration might actually help benefit the plants and their growth, and then and so on, the medicine that they provide to the people. And just as a testament, I was looking at your Instagram page. I want to say it's at Friends of the Trees Botanicals on Instagram, perhaps. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. But you had a giant Lomatium dissectum root,
Yeah.
which was very impressive. And for whatever reason, the medicinal virtues or benefits never seem to stick in my brain. So, are you able to share a little bit about, like, say, the medicine of Lomatium dissectum?
Okay. Most people pronounce it Lomatium.
Oh, okay.
Um, and and the I could say a lot about it. And I could call myself a world expert on Lomatium because there's hardly anybody that tries. Yeah. But there are others and better than me, of course. But as far as medicinal uses, it's one of the very best antivirals ever found in the Western United States, which means it's a world, it's a world world renowned. It may not be world renowned, but in terms of if you had to list the main best antivirals in the world, Lomatium would be one of our contributors from our region. So it's excellent for I use it for all kinds of colds and flus and influenzas. It just so happens that it's also really handy for the C virus. And
Thank you.
so there's it's also good for it's one of the it's antimicrobial, antifungal, antiparasitical. It's really good at taking out a lot of the diseases and things that plague human beings. So anyway, it's a great medicinal. And I'll introduce you when you come here to the Met How. I'll take you out and we'll introduce you to some plants personally, and you can shake their leaves. Okay.
I would love that. And that would have been another word I got wrong was methow. I always read it as metho.
Oh, I
Um,
know, but Met How again, it's a Native American word. It's nice that we have some names out here from the Native Americans. But
absolutely.
they're still around too.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Well, so speaking of Native Americans, I want to say some Lomatium species are actual food too. Do you know if that's true or not?
Yes,
Yeah.
some of the major Native American root plants are Lomatium species. There's a number of them that are specific. There's over 100 species of Lomatium. Some of them are very powerful medicines. Most of them are used but for food by the native peoples. There's only a few that are really exceptionally medicinal, but mostly they're a food source. And some of them are just like, at any rate, almost all of those native food stands have been lost to plowing, grazing, land conversion. And so it's very hard to find the native foods and some of the native medicines in the abundance than when Native Americans were running this continent. They did a great job, and they made sure it was full of food and salmon and big trees and game. And of all the peoples of the world, probably the North American natives had probably one of the best sustainable management systems of the continent. And so, but anyway, we could we could digress in a lot of directions here. Because that ecosystem restoration is one of my big topics. And how do we restore our ecosystems? And how do we restore them so there's more and more medicinal plants in the landscapes? And so I know a lot of people, some people, of course, we know I may be jumping the gun here, I hope, but some
No,
places
please.
in the world, there's a lot of unsustainable wildcrafting, and we're trying to promote sustainable wildcrafting here, where you know, in general, and here particularly. But it isn't enough just to be sustainable, which means that we don't reduce where we're at now. We actually need to increase. So we need a restoration wildcrafting, and combined with ecosystem restoration, so that wildcrafting and medicinal plants become much more abundant in the landscape. And so we'll get into that a bit more. But anyway, I just want to point out that sustainable wildcrafting is real important. And so that's what I've been trying to teach and get across. And I will say that when I started wildcrafting for a living, close to like 30 years ago, I chose it. One of the reasons I chose it is because I wanted to expand the sustainable practices into wildcrafting, because I was part of the organic farming movement. And how do we turn agriculture organic? How do we apply sustainability to wildcrafting was always one of the main reasons I chose that. And so I now know an awful lot about sustainable wildcrafting, and I share that. So we'll be sharing that at the Northwest Wildcrafters Rendezvous. We're bringing together we could call it the Northwest Sustainable Wildcrafters Rendezvous, but it's too long a title already.
Speaking of Lomatium, your event, and tying it all together, I actually have a recommendation. I don't know if you ever heard of the wildcrafter Herron Bray?
Does it ring Herron Bray or Gray?
Bray, Brae. Anyways,
No.
she was one of my instructors at the Columbine School of Botanical Studies back in the day, and she is actually one of the world-renowned experts on Lomatium as well. And she's here in Eugene, so not too far. But anyways, I could definitely do some sort of a connection via email.
Wonderful.
But yeah. Oh, you'd get a kick, out of her. And this might actually be a great time to chat more about your event. I see there's going to be speakers. You're going to be talking about everything related to wildcrafting, the sustainability, tools of the trade, etc. It actually sounds like a really fun event. And I know, knowing you, there's going to be lots of singing and dancing as well. So,
yep, can't have it come to one of my gatherings without being exposed to singing and dancing. We don't twist anybody's arm to do it. But most people,
then I might actually go.
Right. If people want to stand back, and then I'll say this about, I may be doing a circle with singing and dancing, and some people just cannot handle it, and they're standing on the sidelines, and then people start trying to egg them on and get them in the circle. I said, no, don't, you stop. Don't pick on them. It's their choice. Everybody has free will, and I don't want you picking on them, So at any rate, the Northwest Wildcrafting Rendezvous, to put it in perspective. So this is a new gathering. I started dozens of gatherings in my career, and this is my latest gathering. I'm real excited to bring together wildcrafters from around our region, and they're invited from anywhere else as well, to get together to talk about the sustainability, the legalities, the problems that we face. How can we assist each other? So we're, in a sense, it's a way for us to support each other. And most wildcrafters are sort of isolated. There's only a few in each area generally. And so we're just, you might call it's a informal club, or it's a tribe of like-minded people that it's a lifestyle in a sense. There's professionals among us that we're really trying hard to get the professionals like Noah McBride and James Youngworth, and we definitely want to invite Herron Bray now. Yeah. But we're also wanting to invite people that just do it for the family or for small scale or local production. So you don't have to be a professional and make your living doing this. But those people who think that it's a good thing to wildcraft and forage and want to learn more, we're going to bring together a lot of really skilled people. In fact, almost everybody that comes comes with skills and knowledge to share. And so we have, besides workshops, we want to have a lot of discussion groups, round tables, where everybody sits in a circle and plays off of each other and contributes information, so that everybody has a voice. It's lovely to listen to experts and have somebody at the front of the room or the grove or whatever the workshop place is, but it's also really nice to have the exchange, an equal exchange where everybody's just sharing and with what they know. So anyway, so there's a fair amount of that, and we're expecting, we're aiming for like around 200 people or so here in the Methow Valley, May 26th to 28th, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we kept it really affordable. I've always tried to have my events as affordable. Some of them have gotten higher than others, especially under new management. But at any rate, ours is $100 for the whole weekend, with 3 meals a day, all the learning and all the and the excitement of being with this like-minded people. So anyway, so we've kept the price low, and everybody helps out. So it's more like a village. Sometimes you go to a conference and you're waited on, and people ask you what you want for dinner, and you don't have to wash your dishes, or it's like, but you pay big bucks for that service. Well, we kept our prices low, and everybody helps out in the kitchen or at the gate, or helps out in some way. So it's sort of a village where everybody has a place to, a voice and a role to play, and everybody helps out. So I'm expecting it to be really fun and really meaningful, and a lot of heart to it as we get together. In the past, I put on the Northwest Herbal Fair. I started that in 1996, and we used to run an average of, we probably averaged 850 people at each one over the 13 years at its run. And so that's always been a really large, and we have a lot of music there, big stage, and so it's a real festive. And also I started an event called the Montana Herbal Gathering.
Oh, I didn't know you did that.
Which ran for years in Montana. I actually had to start it twice because it foundered at one point and didn't happen for a number of years. And I came back and started it again. And now they're restarting it this year. So that's news, folks. Anybody out there within striking range of Montana Herb Gathering, August 4th and 5th, or is it 5th and 6th? But it's August 5th for sure. And whatever that weekend is, Saturday, Sunday in August, in Missoula, Montana, at the new public library. So that's just getting started again. And then years ago, I put on the Medicinal Herb Growing and Marketing Conference. Now, you would have loved that, Mason. Yeah. That was, I think, 2016, up at Fort Worden in Olympic Peninsula. But we had 450 people it was kind of like a national gathering and regional, and focused on marketing and farming, growing medicinal herb plants. And we had a lot of farmers and a lot of companies there. And wow, that was super exciting. And so here I am starting another type of herbal gathering on wildcrafting. So anybody out there listening is certainly invited. Yeah, it's that's I guess the biggest chunk of it. What any questions about that?
Oh yeah, I've got a question about each different event or comments too. I wanted to say, when I was reading about the Wildcrafting Rendezvous, you said you expect a high level of expertise in the audience, and I wanted to highlight that because that's one of the best benefits of attending an event like this is the off time, not in the classroom, but on the side where everyone's brainstorming. But besides that, I kind of also wanted to ask and I wanted to ask, is it still, if you're like a brand new person and you're interested in wildcrafting, should they still attend?
Well, I guess so.
Yeah.
I'm at this point, they're not breaking down our doors yet. We're not approaching our limit or anything. So,
Yeah.
so yes, if anybody hears this and they're interested, seriously interested, they can come along and, you know, you could say that there's two ways of looking at learning. The
Mhm.
less you know when you go to something, the more you'll learn. But another way to look at it is the more you know when you go to something, the more you can learn. Or in a sense, you can learn at a higher degree or a higher capacity or at a higher level because
Mhm.
you already got all the basics down. And so now you're adding some really uh, more high level stuff or more. Yeah, so it's so both the expert learn and the beginner learn when they go to something like this.
Awesome. Yeah, and I also wanted to highlight the fact that you brought up that people are going to be helping prepare the meals at the Wildcrafting Rendezvous, and that's going to be probably way more fun than being waited on anyways, and you'll make way more community that way. And you're
Mhm.
gonna will some of the food there be wild crafted food?
Well, I'm sure some of it will be.
Yeah.
I'll go out and grab a few things here
Hmm.
locally. May is, of course, there's, the berries aren't on yet. The greens are on. We'll have to go get some Lomatium nudicalis
Okay.
leaves and maybe flowers even at that time. But we can definitely, I know where to get some of that. So we are asking all the participants to bring some food to donate to the kitchen rather than we plan a
Mhm.
menu and then
Right.
we buy everything. No, we want to see what people bring, and we encourage them to bring things that they've wildcrafted or
Yeah.
grown or processed themselves. And with any luck, there'll be a roadkill right about then. Um, and because we'll have a lot of this, you can imagine this attracts a fair amount of like what's called the primitive skills movement or the ancestral skills people as well. I mean, this, we're really kin to that. In fact, there's a gathering here, I think 3 weekends after our event here in the Met Hall called Saskatoon Circle. And that's a primitive skills gathering here as well. And in fact, the Northwest Herbal Fair is going to happen in the Met Hall Valley right 2 weeks after I. So there's within 1 month, there are 3 major wildcrafting herbal events here in the Met Hall Valley. So that's going to be a jam-packed month. People can come and just move here for the month and go to all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot seems to be happening. And as I was alluding to earlier, I'll be driving through, Amanda and I will be driving through in the beginning of May, and we're going to get to hang out with you and Twisp, and we're going to visit Rosalie de la Forêt. And I did want to say, I think I brought this up to you before, but I know John Gallagher and Rosalie de la Forêt actually began their relationship at the Northwest Herbal Fair. And I think you told me that marriages have happened via that event, or maybe that was someone else that told me that, but
Oh yeah,
yeah.
definitely. A lot of couples get together at my events. So if you're a single out there and you're looking for someone of like mind, you should attend one of my events. Keep your eyes open.
I love it. So will this wild crafting rendezvous, do you intend on it being like an annual event or every other year?
Oh, I I like the idea of annual.
Yeah.
Time will tell. I'm expecting this to go well and then build on it because this first time, we can only attract so many of the wildcrafters. We're a busy bunch.
Sure.
But we've already got a good lineup, and I'm sure it will grow. So we're still looking for more presenters. In a sense, in my ideal gathering, everybody that comes is presenter quality.
Mm,
Everybody could present.
yeah.
And so it's really a peer group um, in a sense. So but of course, we're not going to get there this time. This is definitely going to be a wide range of expertise, but a high level of, you might say, commitment and interest.
Mm. Yeah. Sounds like a wonderful event. And where can people learn more about it and to register?
Go to Friends of the Trees Botanicals.com. It's a very long one, but it's easy to spell. Friends of the Trees Botanicals.com. And one of the menu items is Wildcrafter Rendezvous. We actually have a Facebook event page.
Mm.
I imagine there's a link there. I couldn't tell you what it is, but I imagine if you type in Facebook events page, Northwest Wildcrafters Rendezvous, it would pop up. So, at any rate, there's another way that people can link in. We're in the process right now of really expanding the website today and tomorrow, and so we're getting it more up to snuff for people. But registration's open, and doors are open for business, folks. Come on over.
Go sign up. It sounds like a wonderful event. Unfortunately, we'll already be back in Wisconsin at that point, but my contribution will be to link you and Herron Bray up. So
okay, here's another thing though, but
sure.
Of your various listeners, I mean, I must say that, Mason, you've really gotten famous and really well listened to, and you do a great service with the Herbal Podcast and HerbRally. And so people are going to listen to this or watch it from around the US. And I'm really curious, are there any other Wildcrafter rendezvous or gatherings, events in the well, let's stick with North America for now. But what else is going on out there? I would like to think that there's gatherings like this in every bioregion, but I suspect not. I can't say I've heard of any, but if anybody has any, if there's anything else going on, people let me know, send me an email. I'm friends of the trees at yahoo.com. So I've been friends of the tree since 1978. That's when I started Friends of the Tree Society. So I've been there a long time. So it's easy to find me on the internet. I haven't tried to hide or anything. Some people, you try to find their phone number or their email, it's almost impossible. They've got such a good team of people working on it and erasing all of it. But my phone number and email is accessible.
Okay. Well, thank you for the kind words. And if there's anything I'm an expert on in the herbal realm, it is about herbalism events. And I list probably anywhere from, say, 2 to 10 new events on the website per week. And I can't say I've ever seen an event exactly like yours. It seems incredibly unique. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist out there. So yeah, please do email me or Skeeter and let us know about the event, because yeah, it'd be really interesting to know. But in the meantime, Michael, I'll say that you have a very unique offering here.
Great.
Yeah. So let's get into some story time. I was at an event. I want to say it was in Portland. Maybe it was the Portland Plant Medicine Gathering, and I took a class with No McBride, and he was bringing up this story where he was out wildcrafting with you, and I want to say there was some sort story related to balsam root and how the balsam root was peering at the sun in the morning, and I don't remember exactly how the story goes, but it just it made me want to meet you, and it just sounded like such a fun and magical experience. And I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts or opinions on the underappreciated balsam root, Balsamorhiza sagittata, if I recall.
Yes, correct. So Balsamorhiza or balsam root is a fascinating herb, and it's like many flowers do this. The flowers will follow the sun, and so as the sun moves across the sky, they like to keep their faces in the sun. Sunflowers, it's like, oh, the leaves are making photosynthesis, but the flowers are also gathering energy. And maybe I could go off on all kinds of story tangents here, but I will say that just as the leaves, the photons of the sun hit the leaves take them in and with their chlorophyll and use them to create sugars and cellulose and perfumes and plant herbivore deterrents and all kinds. It's a chemical factory powered by the sun. Each leaf is a solar panel. The unseen realm, the nature spirit fairy realm, they take other parts of the sun's energy and feed it, transfer it to the plant. And in a sense, they're a transferal agency. So the plant does not live by sunshine alone, but by other particles, you might say more spiritual or cosmic particles that is also emitted by the sun. And so maybe that's why the flowers like to follow the sun. Mm-hmm. In a sense, there's something going on more than mere photosynthesis or something like that. Balsam root are one of the most underappreciated medicinal plants in the Western US. There's a huge amount of it. You could never unsustainably wildcraft it because cows don't like to eat it. And as a result, all this rangeland still has lots of balsam root. In fact, it may be an increaser under grazing. So there's countless hillsides and mountainsides of balsam root here. They're very long lived. I'm sure that I'm sure 50, maybe, I don't know about 100, but they do die of old age eventually. But there are such a strong taproot that it has a outer coating that is like rock hard. It looks kind of like cottonwood bark, but it's like rock hard. And then the inside is like a rope that they tie ships up with. It looks just kind of like a braided rope. And when that goes down into the ground and sinks in there, it is very difficult to get out. It's the second hardest root to dig, right after redwood's number one. But the Native Americans out in the prairies where they were sleeping at night and they needed to stake their horses so they wouldn't run off or get stolen or whatever, they would clear around the base of a big balsam root plant and tie their horse to the balsam root plant because it could never pull it up. So they used it as a hitching post. So these things are incredibly tough, and it's useful for immune stimulant and also sort of lung problems. It's sort of an expectorant, kind of like elecampane, for instance. So it's said that it's a fair amount like echinacea in terms of its properties. It doesn't have the spice or anything, but it's a wonderful medicinal, should be used more in the world. And there's a lot of it out there. So at any rate, Balsamorhiza sagittata, we sell that in our catalog. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually have one experience with balsam root. Really, it happened in the Columbine school with Howie Brownstein, and yeah, one day during class we actually dug up a root, and I can attest to it. I want to say there was a group of like 4 of us, and we were at it for like 2 hours trying to get that thing up, and it's still I still don't think we got the full root, but one of my favorite things about it, and I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I really love the smell of the root. I want to say Howie described it as like grandpa's cologne or something like that.
Uh-huh. Well, balsam root, any plant that's got the word balsam in, is going to be fragrant, because that's, that term means fragrant, a
Sure.
balsam, or balm of Gilead, for instance. So they're related.
All right, so let's switch gears here, Michael, and talk about creating medicinal forests.
Great. Okay. Well, so one of my big goals in life is global ecosystem restoration, climate stabilization, and I and I know a lot about that stuff. And I teach growing medicinal herbs workshops. This is my 4th year with a 3-part, spring, summer, fall series of classes on growing medicinal plants. And I also teach a lot about agroforestry and ethnobotany and permaculture. And so I've combined all of those plant topics into a new thing I'm promoting, which is I'm calling it creating medicinal forests. So we know that approximately almost half of the plants in any temperate zone I go to, at any rate, I'm most familiar with temperate, are going to be medicinal. So anytime you have a forest, there's always medicinal plants in it. But I think we should be planting small little. There's food forests that have become really now. A lot of people know about the term food forest, where you create a small little food forest. People know about the term Miyawaki forest, where people go for forest bathing and for mental health. There's called urban pocket parks or urban pocket forests. And there's a guy who started something called a national parks in your backyard, where you create like a little wild area, a native area in your backyard. So there's all this talk about creating small bits of forest and community forests. And so I'm promoting the idea that they should all be viewed as medicinal forests. They could have food as a primary objective, but medicine could be the secondary objective. Some forests, all forests would I think it would be difficult to make a forest that didn't have medicinal trees and shrubs, etc., in it. Difficult. But you can design specifically a little forest that are focused predominantly, maybe not wholly, but predominantly on medicinal plants. And that becomes a community resource. Unlike a garden, annuals and maybe short-term or even longer-term perennials, the medicine comes and goes, the gardens come and go. But if you plant a little forest and it gets going and it keeps going, there you have medicine for decades or generations to come. And so everywhere can have part of its own local medicines. We want localization. We want healthy people using herbal medicines instead of the alternatives, the technological alternatives. And so I think that creating medicinal forests is an idea whose time has come, and that a lot of people are going to want to do this around the world. And here's an example. I was on a Zoom call yesterday with the Eco Restoration Alliance, which is an international alliance of people that are doing ecosystem restoration, such as me. And there was one of the people who gave a presentation was Usman. I can't remember his last name right now, but he's from Senegal, and he works also in Mauritania and different parts of the Sahel. And so they're living, this is a very dry area. And he's describing some of the villages. He has a lot of photos of a lot of the villages that he's working with. He's working with like 100 villages now. And he had the before and after pictures. And before, we're looking at like a desolate wasteland of, there may be a few trees or not in the landscape, but as it's sort of like bare dirt. There's like virtually no plants at all. And very stark conditions, hot, dry, hardly any vegetation. And now they're turning that around. They're doing reforestation. They're fixing up the soils. They're bringing life back. They're doing water retention. And so it's a very tough situation. And so during our conversation, I said, I'm promoting creating medicinal forest. So today I wrote him and I said, Usman, can I be of help in this? I said, maybe you have a panel or a group of local herbalists, local healing people that have made you a list of the most important medicinal plants culturally for your region. And you should, and you are already in process of planting these medicinal forests and medicinal gardens to bring these so that the people have medicines, because obviously they're mostly gone. And maybe I can be of some help in promoting the idea at any rate. So we'll see if I end up helping Usman, but I'd like to actually help people in other parts of the world with creating medicinal forests. And I've created I don't have one to show you right here, but I have a book called a Subtropical and Tropical Medicinal Plants Checklist. It's a checklist of subtropical and tropical medicinal plants, trees, shrubs, herbs. And I think it's around 1,500 species in there. And it's a nice little bit of research, all in Latin, some common names. And I do have one of these. This is my growing and wildcrafting medicinal plants in the Pacific Northwest. And I have a checklist of temperate zone herbal species, and I have 1,062 species on the temperate zone list. So I have these, I collect books on medicinal plants. I have hundreds of books, and I collect books on trees. And at any rate, I have a very large research library. I've been researching this for a long time. And so anybody in the world that wants to put in a medicinal forest, I can probably help them with some possible lists or resources. How can they, I'm at the surface of the medicinal trees of the world now. They're one of my bosses, and some of them are thorny, so I got to be careful and try to stick up for them. So at any rate, so I'm really wanting this idea, and so maybe some of you out there listeners, some of you listeners are going to go like, oh yeah, I'll make a medicinal forest. and it doesn't have to be big. Or you could start a small one and then gradually learn, or maybe add on to it to help start other ones. But wouldn't it be nice to see a whole network of medicinal forests? You know, the United Plant Savers, who are friends of yours as well, they have a botanical sanctuary list, and you can go on their website, and there's a map of the world, I think, and there'll be little stars or whatever, and you can click on it, and it takes you to that botanical sanctuary information, so you can see where they are. Well, we should have eventually a map of medicinal gardens. I imagine there may be a map of Milwaukee gardens right now. One of the Ecosystem Restoration Alliance projects is they've made a map of the world. It's called the Big Map of Ecosystem Restoration or something like that. And they have a world map, and you can click on it, and they have hundreds and hundreds, and they're aiming for thousands and thousands of projects for ecosystem restoration around the world. And so you can go there and see where all these projects are and learn about them. So at any rate, any of you webmasters out there, I need, right now there's not many medicinal forests out there that are called that. I'm sure there are. Another thing I'll point out is that if you go and look at overhead photos of dryland Ethiopia and India, and I've been in parts of India and Nepal where most of the land's been deforested, turned into cropland or wasteland, and but there'll be areas of trees, and a lot of times those are the temples. They'll have sacred temple forests. So another type of forest is a sacred temple forest, and you can be sure that a lot of those sacred temple forest species are going to be medicinal. And so in a sense, we could say a creating medicinal sacred forest in a way also. Aren't all forests sacred, or should be considered so? Any rate, they're just a little bit on the international scene. It's like everywhere can make their own medicinal forest, where if you get above tree line or beyond the tree line on the Arctic, you might have to go for shrubs. But I'm sure we can come up with a tundra medicinal plant list and do that too. Okay.
I love the idea of starting a map. Actually, the HerbRally's origins lived in my head probably for a year or two before I actually started anything, because I figured I had to have like this perfect like world map with all the dots and stuff like that of these various herbalism events happening, and then I just decided to turn it into a list. But I did want to ask you, maybe this is a naive question, when you're talking about promoting this idea of creating this medicinal forests, are you suggesting people do this on, say, their own like tiny plot of land or large plot of land, or are you talking about potentially even, say, like a city park or something like that?
All the above, private, public.
Yeah.
And in a sense, you could take an existing ecosystem and enrich it with more medicinal plants. And so you don't have to necessarily start from ground zero. And it would be, I bet a lot of parks would be open to the idea of just like a little medicinal grove or something as part of the park. Yeah. Of course, when you have your own private land, you can do what you want quicker and without as much bureaucracy and
sure.
stuff. So they both have their pluses and minuses. Yeah, all scales. I have here, when you get here to the Methow, Mason, I'll take you over to my 2-acre medicinal forest. I have a 2-acre medicinal forest that's 25 years old, and it's just full of medicinal trees and shrubs and herbs and weeds and plants. And at any rate, we'll show you what we have going here, because I actually have one. I actually have one, a really nice one that's got some age to it, and we have some videos on it. So actually, I could tell your listeners that I have, I think, 4 YouTube channels. And one of them is called, Anna Pilata, it made one of them, and her name's on it. But if you could probably just Google Friends of the Trees or Michael Pilarski on YouTube, and you'd probably be able to find your way to the different channels. There's the Global Earth Repair channel, the Anaplata channel, Friends of the Tree Society channel, and yeah, so people can find those. I think there may be one called the Fairy Library as well.
Well, I'll do my best to find all of them and leave the links in the show notes as well. Yeah, you wear many different hats, Michael. I'm excited to see the medicinal the medicinal forest and the Methow when we visit. And we'd actually love to create a video with you, and maybe we could share with the HerbRally audience, kind of like a little tour. Would be really sweet. Do you know the term? I'm sure you know the term guerrilla gardening. I don't really want to out this person. I believe they've said it publicly, but I want to say one of the herbalists every year or every time there's the International Herb Symposium, they bring like a ginseng plant and plant it out in the woods on the campus of the International Herb Symposium. I've always, for whatever reason, been really fond of the idea of guerrilla gardening. Do you have any thoughts on guerrilla gardening or anything?
Well, yes, there's places for it. And basically it's, gardening or farming or planting on land you don't own or don't have permission on. And it happens way more than you would think. And there, of course, has to be cautions. You may not want to introduce, planting things that will become an invasive problem in the area.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with your species selection. However, I mean, there's exceptions even to that. I think you could introduce dandelion anywhere, and it's an invasive exotic plant, but boy, is it a nice herb. So if you don't have, but they pretty much have gotten anywhere. I actually think that dandelion is the most widely distributed medicinal plant in the world. It occupies more ecosystems. So good on you, dandelion. Yeah, so I won't say too much about guerrilla gardening because I don't want to get myself in trouble.
Okay.
But you can try to. Here's the Native Americans gathered seeds and moved them around. It's like they're not dumb bunnies. Everybody thinks just think indigenous people are like the dumbest people in the world, and because they don't know modern stuff and they don't know how to read or write or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, they were carrying seeds around for millennia and moving things around. And they didn't own land per se. They just said, oh, this would be a good spot for this oak tree. Here, we'll plant some oak trees. Here, we'll put some oak seeds in here. And so humans, we can still, we're still moving things around pretty big time. But you can bring, and they made sure that there was a lot of camas in the environment here, or white camas, which is the Lomatium bulbs. They made sure that certain plants got around, and you might say, stacked the ecosystem with them. The ecosystems were managed by the Native Americans, and they made sure that there was a lot of the plants that they liked, and they managed for those plants, and they helped move them around. And so humans of today can learn from that ethnoecology and that enrichment process. And we can also do our ecosystem restoration projects where we load them up with foods and medicines, and it's all a native, it's all ecosystem restoration, but we're deliberately going out of our way to make sure there's lots of natives of medicinals and foods and craft materials, etc. So in other words, we can do ecosystem restoration that benefits humans as well as the wildlife, as well as the planet at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. Some people tend to think, oh, there's the wilderness and humans should never go there. And then there's the area that we developed the hell out of, and there's a national sacrifice area. And those are the only two extremes, but no, that we need that really big, wide middle ground where it's healthy functioning ecosystems, but they're also have use for humans as well. So there's so there's that middle ground rather than only those two extremes. I would hate to see a world with only those two extremes. In fact, we should be able to do ecological restoration in all our cities and our yards and our towns and our farmlands, and that it shouldn't be that ecosystem restoration is out there. It needs to be actually everywhere. That's how we're going to stabilize the climate, is by having healthy functioning ecosystems and good hydrology. So just to go, I've been doing a lot of research on how to stabilize the world's climate, and the answer is to be found in the oceans, in the forests, and on the land. It's by planting things, it's by sequestering carbon, but it's also by rehydrating the landscapes. We've dried out so many of our landscapes, like I mentioned in Senegal. We need to rehydrate our landscapes, and that adds a lot more water that can then produce a lot more vegetation, and they transpire a lot more moisture and re-humidify the atmosphere. A lot of the atmosphere is much drier than it used to be. Right now, California is not trying to but the idea of rehydrating the atmosphere is probably maybe over the top in California right now with but they've been having a lot of big droughts. And so all this giant amounts of water they're getting now is just going to lead to a lot of big floods, a lot of destruction, and then they'll be back in a drought cycle because they're not holding the water in the landscape. And so we need to hold the water in the landscape and have it feed a lot of medicinal plants and rehydrate the atmosphere for the long term. Anyway, go off on a tangent there.
Yeah, a few thoughts. First of all, I wanted to say I appreciated your conservative answer to the guerrilla gardening thing, because yeah, I would say I was more into the idea maybe in my early 20s, and as I've gotten older, I've gotten wiser and maybe make less rash decisions. And perhaps guerrilla gardening, you got to be informed if on which plant species to be planting if you're going to be going out and doing that stuff. It just kind of, the medicinal food for the medicinal forest kind of reminded me of the story of the person going out and planting ginseng in the woods. But besides that, I want to say it appears that you're tackling a lot of the larger issues that are happening here on the earth, and I just want to say I appreciate it. But you're only one person and you can only do so much. So if you could give the audience any suggestions on how we could be better stewards of the earth, what like maybe one piece of advice would you give us?
Yeah, well, everybody can do a little bit of work for ecosystem restoration wherever they are. There's almost always projects that you can go and volunteer at, or if there aren't any, maybe you should start one. So everybody could do some ecosystem restoration, grow a garden. If you don't grow a garden, be conservationist, stick up for the land that people want to damage. So we need warriors that stop the destruction, but we also need a lot of people that are rebuilding. So pick at least one of those things. I like to say that every human being eats, drinks, breathes air, and we all owe a debt to Earth. And we all have a responsibility, a reciprocation. And we can't just say, oh, well, I'll give some money to Greenpeace and then I can just go about my lifestyle. Think about your lifestyle, but everybody should do some physical work for the earth. You plant trees or whatever. Just talking is nice, and giving money is nice. I could use some of that, but doing the actual work hands-on, everybody should do something with their hands, with their own body, their own little bit of sweat, or to help the earth. And there's lots of organizations out there. I'll just mention one of the parts of my Global Earth Repair Foundation.org website is a Global Earth Repair Hall of Fame. And I have listed there hundreds of people from all around the world that have done really good projects, exemplary work, inspiring work. And you can go there and see what all these other people have done over time and other parts of the world, and look for ideas on I can do something like that. So there's sort of a list of ideas in the sense of what you can do. So at any rate, just a couple of thoughts on everybody should do something. And heck, almost everybody watching this are people that use herbal medicine or go out and gather some of their own. And so just being an herbalist and promoting herbs is part of the work too. So they're all working away on things here.
Did you say you started that?
Pardon?
Oh, did you say you started that Hall of Fame
Yeah, the Global Earth Repair Foundation. I started that in the Hall of Fame. I put
I
that
would love to
together.
look at that and yeah, get inspired by the different people. I'd like to nominate Michael Skeeter Pilarski. Are you on there yet?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
I have
good.
I have some ego, so
Okay.
anyway, yeah, so I,
Oh, good.
it'd be rude for me not to include
Yeah.
myself.
Got to give you your flowers too. Well, cool. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Awesome. Well, so this is the random part of the show, and I'm going to draw a card from here. It's called Let's Get Deep Friends Edition, and I'm just going to choose a random question from here, and we'll both answer it just to get to know Michael a little bit better. Oh, this might be appropriate. We could choose a different one too if you want, but do you believe in ghosts and or spirits?
Oh, I think that's a great segue. Now I can talk about. Well, yes, I live in a world, a spiritual world. We all do, but not everybody recognizes it. Modern materialism, scientific materialism, says that there is no spirit, and God is dead. There is no spirit, um, and there are no fairies. There are no nature spirits. There are no ghosts. There are ancestors. There are no ancestors out there watching. There are no angels. There's none of these things. Well, my universe is populated with all these spiritual beings, and I particularly work with nature spirits and fairies and devas, and been doing that for a long time. I started a Fairy and Human Relations Congress 23 years ago, and where we get together with people that do communicate with the nature spirits. We've had Dorothy McLean from Finn Horn and David Spangler lots of times, and R.J. Stewart and Peter Tompkins of The Secret Life of Plants. A lot of the really well-known people, and just many presenters. So I get to rub elbows with people that
Mm.
work with spirits and talk to them and listen to them. So and there's a lot of us. We may sound weird, but that's most people sort of keep it under the hat and don't talk about it in public. But I'm old, so I don't care about my reputation. So anyway, so I'm fine with so the ghost is a very big topic, so I won't really go into that. Other than that, yes, there's a lot of kinds of spirits in the world, and not all of them are happy, and not all of them are nice. And a lot of people get stuck on the earth plane after they die and become, you might say, ghost is a common term for someone that's passed on, but it hasn't been able to sort of like graduate and get out of the pull of Earth's gravity, so to speak.
Mm.
But yeah, so it's the world's a lot nice. I would say the world's a lot more interesting when there's magic in it than when there's no magic. And also there's more hope. There's more hopefulness in when there's a world of magic and miracles and helping beings and natures and helping spirits, etc. So yeah, everybody gets to choose, though. There's a lot of free will. Now I'm really interested to hear you answer the question. I heard you say that.
Yeah. I first of all, I want to say that might have been the perfect card to pull for you. I would rather have heard that answer than like your favorite food or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I've always, since I want to say 2 years old, I have early memories of me like praying to God, essentially. I've always been very spiritual. I was raised in an atheist home where there was no God, there was no spirit, there was no nothing. But for whatever reason, I was always very drawn to have some sort of spiritual practice. Being raised by atheists, it led me to like really search out some sort of spiritual practice or religion. So I've experimented with lots of different religions. I've also done a fair amount of like psychedelics, mushrooms and whatnot. So I feel as if that's kind of informed some of my beliefs at this point too. So I do feel as if there's some sort of energy, higher power, God, that kind of thing. I really can't speak to the ghost side of things, but I do feel like that there's some sort of uh energy out there. And I do feel as if when I put good things out in the world and love out in the world, that I'm getting some sort of positive response for whatever reason. And I've seen the opposite true, say for various friends and family members who live a life of crime or this or that. And then, um, then they get reciprocated with what they put out in the world. And to me, it feels as if there is some sort of higher power, spiritual aspect. It's hard for me to like name it. But I do pray regularly, and I feel as if that's beneficial for my spirit and my mental health. And yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'll say about that.
Right. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we better not stay on that too long. But at any rate, you could the fairies obviously set me up for that one.
Yeah, totally. Well, awesome, Michael. So last question, I've been asking everybody this. What is it that keeps you learning and growing? Like, what's your big why for doing this practice of yours?
Yeah, good question. Well, what motivates me is, as I said, service to the earth, and also uh, love of nature. I just
Mhm.
love being out there in nature. And so I'm fed by being out in nature. And so that's partly what keeps me going and feeds me. And also, I guess, that spiritual leaning too. So I have no problem keeping going. People keep saying I'm going to burn out. They've been telling me that for decades. And I actually must admit, after there was a point last year after my Global Earth Repair Summit International, that was so much that I was a little burnt out after that. I'm still actually recovering, but I'm coming back and putting on this rendezvous, etc. So I'm doing a lot of teaching this year, and some organizing. But yeah, I have no problem keeping going. It's fun, and life is fun, and there's a lot of great people. I will say this: when you are serving the public and you're serving the greater good, and you're working out front for it, I get to hang out with some of the nicest, wonderfulest people in the world, just like you, Mason. We have a great set of friends and acquaintances and people we get to rub elbows with. And you just think, if you're a banker trying to make as many billions of dollars as possible, who are you going to be hanging out with? And maybe it's fun too. But anyway, we call this good, clean fun. And I'm fed by the friendship and the love of all the people I know, and also by the plants and the trees. They send. I think they're trying to keep me going too.
Mm.
So, anyway, no problem. Everybody, if your goal is service, there's certainly no problem finding work. May not be paid work, but there's no problem finding work.
Amen. I love that. It's a beautiful answer. I think that's a great way to wrap up. I do want to encourage everybody to check out the Northwest Wildcrafting Rendezvous. Definitely check that out, as well as all the other amazing projects that Michael Skeeter Pilarski's got going on. It's been really nice to hang out with you for the past hour and some change. So thanks for joining me on the show.
Thank you, and good wishes to everybody out there. Plants be with you, and check out if you want to see more of this. Well, you got lots of YouTubes out there, and I'll see you in May here, Mason, in person.
That sounds like a plan. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
Take care. You too.
Hey everyone, this is Mason with HerbRally. Thanks so much for watching today's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, and also go ahead and subscribe. We come out with new herbal content each and every week. If you didn't know, HerbRally also lists herbalism events. We list herbalism events chronologically. We list them also by state. So you could just go ahead and search by Oregon or Wisconsin or wherever you live. You can find out what herbalism events are happening in your neck of the woods. We also list herbalism events, virtual herbal events. So if you can't make it to an in-person conference or plant walk, we list lots of virtual events as well. To find out more, you could go to herbrally.com/events or herbrally.com/virtual. But if you can help it, I would highly recommend trying to go to an herbalism conference. Those are some of the best learning experiences I've ever had, and that's where you can find different herbal teachers, and then maybe you could perhaps take their apprenticeship. But yeah, just do what you can. Get out there and learn about the herbs, like yarrow, dandelion, corn, all the above, like all the medicinal herbs. And we'll see you out there. Hope to see you at an herb conference. All right, bye.